So why would I read Tarnsman of Gor? I don't know. I just like to read stuff that's controversial. I just kind of like the controversy. You know what I mean? So I was messing around on Wikipedia looking at Michael Moorcock because Moorcock wrote a book to me which is extremely offensive. Behold the Man, one of the most anti-Christian novels ever written. So what does Michael Moorcock hate? Michael Moorcock wants light, mild censorship of the Gore series. What the fuck is the Gore series? Look it up. Princess of Gore, or well, I think one of them is Princess of Gore, but the Gore series is basically Princess of Mars, BDSM. You combine those two. So what the fuck? This is like the most hated book ever. I try to figure out like apparently it was a big deal in the 70s and the 60s and stuff. Maybe a little bit in the 80s. So then I like go in and go on YouTube and it's like dead. But I look and I'm looking into the history of these books. There's two 80s like direct to video type, not the biggest, but there were two 80s live action movies which are of lower quality, of cheesy quality, and they take out the tarns and don't even have tarns because tarns are giant eagles people ride. That's why it's called Tarnsman of Gor, because their cavalry is giant eagles that people ride, which is pretty sweet, by the way. But getting back, so they made two films about it in the 80s, and they have a role-playing game, because it's Princess of Mars. It's a fantasy. There's no guns. Everybody uses melee weapons, and, technology for weapons in this universe is set to like 1300, but agricultural technology is like a modern or above modern, and architectural technology is really high too, because it's just artificially set in this novel. Anyway, we'll get into that later. So anyway, they also made a role-playing game, and there is a anime. Let's see what the anime is called. It's like Fencer of Mareva, which is heavily inspired by Gore, hentai, one of those tentacle fucking Japanese abominations. Well, let's get back to it. Tarnsman of Gor and the Gore series was a pretty big deal back in the day during the 70s. And it seems when the porn craze happened in the 70s and everything became a lot raunchier, judging from this book, that the books must have jumped up in the sexuality department, because this book doesn't seem that bad to me at all. I don't understand. I mean, in this universe, women aren't doing the best. They're slaves, but they have honor. The main character is not a misogynist. In fact, the main character is like fucking beta bitch who falls in love with some girl on first sight and like chases her down after she hates him and like sacrifices his life for this dumb, stupid bitch who tried to kill him all these times. So it must have been when they made these books later, he must have just escalated, and that's what I heard people say when I go on the Amazon reviews. Is the first couple of books are good, and then as it goes on, they just turn into straight BDSM and just kind of misogynistic pseudo philosophy. Now, if that's your thing, good for you. That's not my thing. Now, to talk about this book as a book, it is a 60s pulp, sci-fi, science fiction, sci-fi fantasy, whatever, Princess of Mars ripoff, and it can be pretty fun sometimes, but it has the pulpy stuff of like cliffhangers, little explanation of like very little character development, only minimal plot explanation. I mean, this is fun because sometimes being bogged down in descriptions of the plot, and world building can be awful. And this doesn't bog you down there. So if you want to read something that's light, like 200 pages, and it's kind of edgy, but it's really like halfway. It's like very mild, watered down Roosh, this first novel of edginess against women. Like, it's not that bad. It's just literally, like the worst, it just talks about hypergamy, like the natural state is hypergamy, and women only being attracted to the highest class of men. and that women, it's not even like rape fantasies are in this really, and I that's what I understand it gets into later, but it's like women desiring men based on their status, not how good they treat them. So men that have higher status but abuse women are considered highly attractive by women. That's like as edgy as this book gets. So the plot is that the main character, John, no, John Norman's the writer. Well, the main character is a professor like John Norman, and he gets taken up, and he's a secret gamma king, and he goes into Gor, and he's like half Gorian. Gor is this counter-Earth, or these alien bug deities that like control it, stock it with humans, and stock it with these giant lizard monsters. I forget what they're called. And they stock it with, intelligent spiders and giant eagles called Tarns, and just kind of see him fight. And his dad was a Gorian, and his dad like left his mom or something, or was forced to go back to Tarn. So he gets abducted by the priest kings, the insectoid rulers that stock the planet, like a game reserve full of humans for their own amusement. So he gets taken up by a UFO into Gor, and Gor, these priest kings have how they stock it for warfare for their own amusement is they ban pretty much all war technology from 1300 on, but they allow modern architecture and agriculture, and to a certain extent kind of infrastructure. So it makes it so that war is a lot easier, and then of course there's a giant Tarn, so it can get pretty awesome. The action scenes in this are actually pretty good, but the story's really basic. So he comes in, there's this one city that's conquering all the other cities, and he's a secret gamma king or whatever. He's a cuck in Earth, but when he comes to Gor, he's the ultimate badass. So his dad trains him. He's great with swords. He's a great Tarnsman. He can ride the Tarn, the giant eagle. So he goes on this daring mission to steal the Homestone, which is the center of these city-states, because the whole world, Gor, which is the counter-Earth, it's as big as the Earth, and it's covered with, these humans that are stocked into it. So he's going to go to the city-state, the enemy city-state of his father's city-state, because his father's, of course, the leader, because he has to be royalty of the city. His father's the leader of this one city-state, and this other city-state, which is the evil empire that's conquering everything, he's got to go take their Homestone. Their Homestone is basically the anchor of their civilization, their primal idol, which gives the resolve for them to exist, their justification to exist as a city-state or an empire in this case. If that Homestone is taken, they lose the favor of the priest kings, they lose the mandate of heaven, if you will, and they start to fall apart. So he steals the Homestone of the enemy empire, and he takes the princess, the daughter of the enemy king, and he falls in love with her, and then he goes through all these like cliffhangers, almost dies, gets caught up, becomes a slave, escapes, almost dies, goes into the river, almost drowns, finds his Tarn, finds that when he stole the Homestone, now there's a giant civil war, all the countries are trying to conquer that empire, he's trying to save the princess girl that he loves. Anyway, at the end, he ends up, saving the day, saving the empire from being genocided, returning their Homestone so that the war ends, so that the empire ends, but there's general peace on Gor. He gets his girlfriend that was a princess, but then all of a sudden the priest kings consider him such a big badass that they force him to go back in his UFO on his wedding night. And then it ends, he's like, someday I'll return to Gor, and obviously he does, because, there's like 30 fucking books of this. So my general opinion is this is a fun book. If I don't know if I'm going to read any more. I don't see the point, really. There's obviously Princess of Mars, and there's better ripoffs of Princess of Mars, to be honest. But it's fun. I don't regret reading it. It was pretty fun. It's just schlock. It's just pulp. I like pulp. Here's my copy of Tarnsman. As you can see, this is actually... Here, let me turn the page here. This is actually the very first edition. 1966. It says on the back, this is an original publication, not a reprint. So this is the very first copy. It has horrible, horrible
cover art. Look at that. It's awful. But it's a classic Baleen book. There's ads for 60s Baleen books, and it's kind of funny because the stuff that we see as classic is just right next to complete garbage. And Tarzan has about the level that Lord of the Rings or Dune has today. So it's kind of interesting. So yeah, that's my copy of Tarnsman. This book is really easy and cheap to get online. It's like just a few dollars on Amazon, so you could just order it, get a used copy like this. The best thing about this being such a trashy, pulp fiction book is it's just so easy to get and so cheap, and it's in these trade paperbacks. You can get it for nothing. I really wish I had some of those like seductive, naked ladies with the fucking lizard monster on the cover. That I really wanted to get that when I ordered this, but I got this really shitty, like nobody's gonna fucking read this thing 1966 cover. But I got the book for like $3, like a penny plus shipping, so like $4. So I'm not complaining.